In Seoul, there are apartment towers so tall and so crowded that neighbors can live side by side for years without ever speaking. Lights turn on, lights turn off, curtains open, curtains close, and everyone assumes the people behind those windows are still alive. But in one building in Mapogu, tenants began noticing something strange. At exactly 2:13 every morning, the woman in Unit 1404 stood at her window and waved. The problem was this: Unit 1404 had been empty for 3 months.
Min-jun moved into Samhyeon Heights after his divorce because he wanted a life that made no emotional demands. The building was perfect for that. Clean lobby, silent elevators, keycard access, smart locks, no children in the halls, no old women asking personal questions, no one who cared whether you came home drunk, angry, or empty. His unit on the 14th floor was narrow and immaculate, with a single window overlooking the parking structure. Across the courtyard, another identical tower rose like a concrete mirror. Hundreds of windows stared back. The first week passed without incident. On the 8th night, unable to sleep, Min-jun stood in his kitchen drinking convenience store coffee and looking out across the courtyard. Most windows were dark, a few blue television glows, one flickering bathroom light. Then, in Tower C, Unit 1404, a woman stepped up to the glass. She was thin, dressed in a pale nightgown, her hair hanging over one shoulder. She raised one hand and waved slowly. Min-jun glanced behind him, irrationally checking whether she might be waving at someone inside his own apartment. Then he looked back. She was still there, smiling faintly. He did not wave back. The next morning, he mentioned it to the security guard while collecting a package. The guard frowned. Tower C? 1404? Yes, across from me. That unit is vacant. Min-jun laughed. Then someone broke in. But when the guard called management, the answer was immediate. The unit had been cleared after the previous tenant died. No one new had signed yet. Maybe cleaners? Min-jun said. The guard only shrugged. At 2 in the morning? That should have unsettled him more than it did. But city life trains people to let odd things pass. There are too many strangers, too many closed doors, too many small horrors that turn out to be nothing. Still, the next night, at 2:13, he found himself waiting by the window. Right on time, she appeared. This time she did not wave. She pressed both palms to the glass and leaned close, as if trying to see inside his unit. Her smile widened unnaturally. Then the lights behind her shut off all at once, leaving only her face dimly visible in reflected city glow. Something about the way she remained standing there in total darkness made his stomach tighten. He stepped away from the window and pulled the curtain closed. The following evening, there was a notice in the elevator. Reminder: do not hold entry doors open for strangers. Report unusual behavior immediately. Underneath, someone had written in pen, "She only enters if invited." Min-jun stared at it until the elevator doors opened on his floor. He began sleeping badly. Each night, just before 2:13, he would wake with the certainty that someone had spoken in his room. Sometimes he heard the soft ding of his smart lock, sometimes the scratch of fingernails along the outer wall. Once, half asleep, he thought he saw condensation bloom on the inside of his bedroom window in the shape of a handprint. At work, he became distracted, irritable. He checked Tower C constantly through the office webcam app he had installed facing his own window. At 2:13 one morning, While watching on his phone from a taxi, he saw her again. Only now she was not standing in Unit 1404. She was standing inside his apartment. The feed lasted 2 seconds before cutting to static. He nearly crashed into the taxi door trying to get out. When he got home, the unit was locked. No signs of forced entry, nothing stolen. But the air was colder than it should have been, and his bathroom mirror had been wiped clean, except for one line of writing traced through the steam from his earlier shower. "Why didn't you open the door?" Police came, looked around, and were polite in the way professionals become when they think a man is unraveling alone in an apartment too quiet for him. There were no fingerprints, no tampering with the lock system. The building manager blamed a malfunction in the camera feed. That evening, Min-jun knocked on the door of Unit 1403, his own next-door neighbor. A middle-aged woman opened only after he knocked 3 times. "Have you heard anything at night?" "From where?" she asked. "From my apartment or outside?" Her expression changed instantly, not to confusion, but fear. "You should leave," she said. "Why?" Instead of answering, she glanced up and down the hall, then opened the door a little wider. Her living room windows were covered with newspaper and taped shut. "3 tenants ago," she said quietly, "a woman lived in your unit. She threw herself from the rooftop." He felt his skin go cold. "What?" "Because that's not where she started." She closed the door in his face. That night, Min-jun searched old articles and forum posts until dawn. Eventually, he found a buried comment thread from years ago discussing a suicide at Samhyeon Heights. A user claimed the woman had been alone for days before her death, sending messages to neighbors saying someone was already inside her apartment. Another commenter said security footage showed her speaking in the elevator to empty space. The final post chilled him most. She wasn't looking out of the window. She was looking in at the next apartment. Min-jun barely lasted another day. He packed a bag and booked a hotel. At 2:13 a.m., from the hotel room, he got a notification that motion had been detected in his apartment. He opened the feed. The camera showed his living room in green night vision. At first, nothing. Then the bedroom door slowly opened. A woman stepped out, head bent at an angle too severe to be natural. She moved with small twitching motions, like frames missing from a video. She came close to the camera. Her face filled the screen. It was not bruised or rotten or monstrous. It was exhausted, tear-streaked, human. And she whispered, "Help me." The feed cut. Against every sane instinct, Min-jun returned before dawn with 2 police officers and building security. They entered together. His apartment was empty, but in the closet, behind his winter coats, they found a narrow maintenance hatch he had never noticed. It opened into a cramped service shaft running between units. There were old food wrappers inside, empty water bottles, used tissues, a blanket. Someone had been living in the walls. The police became suddenly attentive. They searched adjacent service spaces and found signs of movement stretching several floors up and down. One officer muttered that it looked like someone knew the building's skeleton intimately. "An intruder?" asked Min-jun. No one answered. In the shaft just behind the wall where his bed stood, they found a cell phone too old to power on. Wedged beside it was a thin stack of Polaroids. Each showed sleeping tenants photographed from impossible angles inside their apartments. The dates on the back stretched over 8 years. In the final photograph, Min-jun lay asleep in his own bed, and beside him, half hidden in darkness, sat a woman in a pale nightgown, staring into the camera with dead, flat eyes. The police sealed the shaft and told him not to stay alone. He moved into a motel. Investigators interviewed former tenants. More stories surfaced. Scratching in the walls, missing food, showers turning on, windows found open. A child claiming the sad auntie watched him sleep. Then came the strangest discovery of all. Building records showed that the woman who had supposedly killed herself had never existed. The name in the article was false. The lease attached to Min Jun's unit years ago belonged to a man in his 70s. There was no official suicide report matching the story everyone in the building repeated. It had become a rumor so often repeated that management started treating it as fact. So, who had died? The answer came from an elderly former maintenance worker in Incheon who finally recognized the Polaroids. He said that years ago, a female cleaner had gone missing while working nights at Samhyun Heights. She was undocumented, poor, invisible in all the ways cities are built to exploit. Security barely noticed when she stopped showing up. The supervisor told everyone she had simply run off. But she had told the maintenance worker something days before vanishing. That there was a man living in the shafts. A man who had built himself a hidden route through the building and watched tenants from inside the walls. No one believed her. The police opened sealed sections of the service network between towers. In a narrow cavity behind Unit 1404 in Tower C, they found bones. A woman's bones, folded into a space barely large enough for a body. She had not jumped. She had been put there. The story should have ended there. A stalker, a murderer, an urban nightmare with a human face. But it didn't. Because that night, after the remains were removed, every camera in both towers failed at exactly 2:13 a.m. for 11 minutes. When the system came back online, residents on multiple floors were found standing at their windows, dazed as if sleepwalking. Every one of them said the same thing. Someone had been waving from across the courtyard. Min Jun left Seoul within the month. 6 years later, living in Busan, remarried, outwardly recovered, he almost convinced himself the building had been a convergence of trauma, rumor, and fear. Something real had happened there, yes, but the rest had been suggestion, collective unease. Then, one rainy night, his daughter, 5 years old, pointed at the apartment window behind him and said, "That lady says you still didn't open the door." He turned so fast he spilled tea onto the floor. No one was there. His daughter frowned. She says she wasn't asking to come in. He could barely speak. What was she asking? The child looked confused, as if the answer were obvious. She wanted you to let her out. And only then did Min Jun finally understand. The woman at the window had never been trying to enter his apartment. She was trapped inside it. What had watched him sleep from the walls, what had worn her face and used her voice, was the thing that killed her. And when he sealed the shaft, when he ran, when he refused to open the hidden space again, he had locked it in with her. People fear being alone in the city. But there is something worse than loneliness. Living in a place where walls are thin enough for your neighbors to hear you scream, and still no one comes. So the next time you move into a beautiful apartment with a perfect view, ask yourself one question before you sleep. Are you the first person living there, or just the latest one?
Follow for more true horror stories. We'll be back with another one soon.